Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Jai Radha Shyama Sundar Radhe Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Vrindavana Dham Jaya Vrindavana Dham Jaya Vrindavana Dham Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Parivrajakaacharya Shtotra Sat. His Divine Grace Abhay Charana Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Shyama Sundar Lalita Vishakha Ki Jai. Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Ki Jai. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vasant Panchami Mahotsav Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhobhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo mahavadanyaya Krishna prema pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya namane Gaurat Vishe namaha. Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakhyam Namami Bhaktashaktikam. Aradhyo Bhagavan Vrajeshatanayas Tadhama Vrindavanam. Ramya Kachidupasana Vrajavadhu Vargena Ya Kalpita. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanamamalam Prema Pumartho Mahan. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhormatamidam Tatradara na paraha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. A very warm welcome to everyone on the holy occasion of Vasant Panchami. In the Vedic calendar, it is referred to as Magh Shukla Panchami, the month of Magh. Secondly, the fortnight of the waxing moon, that is Shukla, the brightness of the moon keeps increasing, and Panchami, the fifth day. So this is considered a very auspicious day in Vedic culture. And at an ordinary or mundane level, people in India celebrate this festival because it marks the beginning of spring. Spring, the actual date is about 40 days away, roughly, I think. But the spring season is supposed to commence from this day. And therefore, there are a lot of festivities. So those in the agricultural community celebrate it especially. And the spring festival is very pleasant. It is neither too cold nor too hot. The winter cold starts receding. Of course, this is not of much relevance in the southern parts of the country, but in the north, where the winters can be a little extreme, this indeed is a very pleasant season, the season of spring. In the Vedic calendar, there are 6 seasons. We can start with, let us say, the summer season, which is called Grishma. Grishma Ritu. Ritu means season. Grishma refers to the hot season. After Grishma Ritu comes Varsha Ritu. Varsha is the monsoon season, when it rains for about 4 months. It's also the time of the Chaturmasya, the 4 months, when the sadhus are not supposed to travel. Of course, in the modern day, for Krishna's service, all the sadhus travel. But traditionally, because everything would be very muddy and watery and it would be difficult to travel, they would stay in one place. Then after the Varsha Ritu comes the autumn season, which is called Sharad Ritu. It's the most pleasing season in the whole year, because the monsoon season has just got over, and because of the rains, everything is lush green. So nature is at its most beautiful at this time. And also the slush and the mud and everything that is found in the rainy season is not there anymore now. And autumn season is the time when Krishna celebrates or performs. At the beginning of the autumn season, he performs the Rasa Leela and the Sharat Purnima festival, and then the Kartik month begins also. So that is the autumn season. The most brilliant and beautiful decoration of the autumn season is Krishna's playing of the flute. So after autumn season, then we have what is called pre-winter, which is Hemant Ritu. After Hemant Ritu, we have the deep winter, which is called Shishir. That is the 5th season. And then we have the spring season, which is the Vasant Ritu. So today we are in the beginning of the spring season here. Now these seasons have been largely described in relation to the climate in India. Obviously in other countries, in other parts of the world, the climates, etc. are different. You may not have 6 seasons of the way that we do here in India. But because it's mentioned so frequently in the scriptures, and because many of the festivals are celebrated in that connection, so it's always very nice to mention these points and to learn about them, to know them. So the Vasanta Ritu, or the spring season, is also beautiful because the heat of the summer season hasn't started. The intense cold of the winter season is receding. So it is neither too hot nor too cold. It is also the time when many will harvest their crops, etc. That happens around sometime around this period, plus minus a few days, depending on the region. So all over the country, in this culture, actually, it is considered an auspicious day. So, and also it happens to be Saraswati Puja. It is the day where Goddess Saraswati, the goddess of learning, is especially worshipped. So in Vedic culture, students, they especially worship Saraswati so that they can learn their subjects and they can excel in their studies, that they can understand the subjects that are taught, they can remember it. So this is especially good for students. But without learning, without education, what is human society? It will be like animal society. And here we don't refer only to mundane education, we are referring to spiritual education primarily. And then the other education of reading, writing, arithmetic, that must be there, of course. So when we speak of Saraswati from a devotional point of view, we are speaking not only of ordinary education, which is essential for everyone to know, but more importantly, the spiritual education. So we can seek the blessings of Goddess Saraswati so we can understand spiritual knowledge better. Srimati Radharani is the original Saraswati Devi. She is the Moola Saraswati, the original Saraswati, the origin of all the goddesses. So in effect, we are also praying to Srimati Radharani along with Saraswati Devi for mercy, that we can understand this very deep and intricate, subtle spiritual knowledge, especially the knowledge that is connected to bhakti, and especially the knowledge that is connected to the mood of Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, this occasion of Vasant Panchami is especially celebrated. And the deities in our temple in Krishna Balaram Mandir in ISKCON, and also all the other temples in Vrindavan, are very gorgeously decorated. And in particular, they wear yellow garments and jewels and flowers and so on. And so in that mood, you will see many, many people in Vrindavan also dress in yellow clothes and yellow garments. So this is like a tradition. And the bhoga that is offered to the deities is also filled with, not filled with, but has quite a bit of saffron, kesar, and also other yellow ingredients in order to match the yellow color of the surroundings, of the deities' clothes, of the devotees' clothes. So this is the color of the season. This is the color of the day. Just like on Sharat Purnima night, the deities are dressed in white, because that is the night when the autumn sun is actually at its purest, brightest, and most beautiful. So it is sparkling white. So in order to be in line with that mood, the deities are also dressed in that shining white dress. So similarly, on the day of Vasanta Panchami, because the spring color is like yellow, very mild kind of yellow, so the food that is offered to the deities, their clothes, are all in yellow. And it's also, incidentally, in Vrindavan, marks the beginning of a 40-day festival of Holi. I'm not aware of any other place where Holi is celebrated in this way as in Braj. It is not just one day. There are varieties of Holis that are celebrated in different parts of Braj on different days. And they're celebrated according to different traditions. In Barsana, you will have one kind of Holi and so on. But the day of Holi will be a little later. But in preparation for that, in Braj, many types of Holi start beginning. Starting from this day, actually, it commemorates the time when Krishna in Vrindavan would have pastimes with the gopis, in which Krishna and the gopis would throw at each other fragrant flower petals, various colored powders, and colored water. And there would be a transcendental fight, so to speak, a war between the gopis and Krishna. And sometimes the cowherd boys would also join in. So these kind of celebrations or festivals or pastimes would happen in Vrindavan, starting today, going all the way up to Holi. Of course, on the day of Holi, everything culminates, and I think the day after there are also some celebrations. So it is a rather vigorous celebration in Braj. So it is not for the faint-hearted. In any case, it is very boisterous. So devotees basically remember from this period on till Holi these very beautiful pastimes of Krishna with the gopis. But in connection to Vrindavan, there is also a very important event or a pastime that takes place on this day. Rather, more accurately, on this night, on the night of Vasant Panchami, which is called the Vasanti Ras, the Ras Leela. Just as the main Ras Leela of Krishna with the gopis happens on Sharat Purnima, it is not the only occasion when Krishna performs the Ras Leela. The next most famous Ras Leela happens on this day at night, because it is also a very, very suitable time. The atmosphere, the temperature, the climate is just right for Krishna to perform the Rasa Leela with the gopis. And it is explained by the Brajabasis, and it is also actually described in great detail in his poetic way by the great Vaishnava poet Jayadev Goswami in his celebrated magnum opus, the Geet Govinda, that on this night of Vasant Panchami, which is very auspicious, becomes all the more auspicious because Krishna performed the Ras Leela in Govardhan with the gopis at a place called Chandra Sarovar. And it is said that at this time, the moon stood still to take darshan. Generally, every other day, the moon moves. It rises in the east at a certain point in the evening, and then it traverses the sky, goes all the way up, and then it sets in the west sometime towards the late night or early morning, generally. So it's constantly moving, the sun. But on this night, when Krishna performed the Rasa Leela, what happened was that the moon was so stunned in ecstasy, being witness to this most extraordinary divine pastime, that he just stood still. He was stunned in ecstasy. He could not move. One of the symptoms of ecstasy of somebody who is experiencing this joy. And what's more, he also wanted to illumine the whole pastime arena with his rays, with the full moon rays properly. So it is said that Krishna's Rasa Leela, even at the time of Sharat Purnima, went through the whole night. But actually our acharyas say that the Sharat Purnima night actually was the night of Brahma. And Brahma, Krishna compressed that whole night of Brahma into one night on the earth planet. So actually on the transcendental platform, the Rasa Leela of Krishna, by his inconceivable mystic potency, happened for one whole night of Brahma, but appears to us to be like one night on earth. So similarly here also it is said by the Brajabasis that the Rasa Leela that was performed by Krishna with the gopis at Chandra Sarovar near Govardhan on the night of Vasanta Panchami also went on for a night of Brahma, and Chandra remained there. So this is a very beautiful pastime, and people gather at Chandra Sarovar on this night and celebrate. So as devotees of Radha and Krishna in the mood of Vrindavan, we are especially conscious of festivals like this, especially this festival, and we try to remember that. There are many other important events that have happened on this day, especially the appearance day of some important personalities, and disappearance day also of one personality, whom I would like to discuss in brief. But before that, it is perhaps suitable that we sing a song which is called Vasanti Ras, because it celebrates especially the springtime. And the Ras means the Rasa Leela festival. This is a song from the Prarthana by Narottam Das Thakur, Vasanti Ras, and the translation is the amorous pastimes in spring. So this is a beautiful song about Krishna and the gopis in Vrindavan, especially in the spring season. So for those of you who have access, you may open up to this song. It is called Vasanti Ras. It starts with Vrindavan Ramyasthana, Divya Chintamani Dhama. So this is the most appropriate song to sing today. So I thought it is nice if we all sing it together. So I have given you a minute or two to open up your songs, either in your physical song book or in electronically, if it's available with you. Okay. So I'll read the translation first. The beautiful place known as Vrindavan is a transcendental abode in the spiritual world and is made entirely of divine touchstones. There are many beautiful temples there made out of jewels, and the swans known as Rajhansa play in the waters of the river Yamuna, which flow through that transcendental land. In the water of that divine river, there is a beautiful golden lotus of 100 petals. In the midst of that lotus, there is a golden platform surrounded by 8 petals. Situated upon those 8 petals are the 8 principal Sakhis headed by Lalita and Vishakha. On that golden platform, the divine couple sit upon a jeweled throne. In the company of Lord Shyam sits the beautiful Radhika. The beauty and sweetness of Sri Radha and Govinda's forms during their talks, which are filled with smiles and laughter, is emanating showers of nectar. Narottam Das says, "May these eternal pastimes, filled with transcendental joy, be ever manifest in my heart." So this song does not exactly describe the Rasa Leela, but it does speak about how Radha and Krishna and the gopis are together in Vrindavan, especially in the season of spring. So we'll sing the song now. Vrindavana Ramya Sthana Divya Chintamani Dhama Ratana Mandira Manohara.
Vrindavana Ramya Sthana Divya Chintamani Dhama Ratana Mandira Manohara.
Vrindavana Ramya Sthana Divya Chintamani Dhama Ratana Mandira Manohara.
Vrindavana Ramya Sthana Divya Chintamani Dhama Ratana Mandira Manohara.
Avrita Kalindini re Rajhamsa Keli Kore Tahe Shobhe Kanaka Kamala.
Avrata Kalindini राजहंस केलिकोरे ताहे शोभे कनक कमल
आवृत कालिंदिनीरे राजहंस केलिकोरे ताहे शोभे कनक कमल
आकृत कालिंदिनीरे राजहंस केलिकोरे ताहे शोभे कनक कमल
तार मध्ये हेमपीठ अष्टदले बेष्टित अष्टदले प्रधाना नायिका
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 तार मध्ये रत्नासने बोशिया छेन्दुई जने श्याम संगे सुंदरी राधिका
तार मध्ये रत्नासने बसिया छेन्दुई जने श्याम संगे सुंदरी राधिका
तार मध्ये रत्नासने बोशिया छेन्दुई जने श्याम संगे सुंदरी राधिका
तार मध्ये रत्नासने बसिया छेन्दुई जने श्याम संगे सुंदरी राधिका
ओ रूप लावण्य राशि अमिया पोड़िछे खसी हास्य परिहास संभाषणे
रूप लावण्य राशि अमिया पोड़िछे खसी हास्य परिहास संभाषणे
ओ रूप लावण्य राशि अमिया पोड़िछे खसी हास्य परिहास संभाषणे
रूप लावण्य राशि अमिया पोड़िछे खसी हास्य परिहास संभाषणे
नरोत्तम दास कोय नित्य लीला सुखमय सदाई स्फुरुक मोर मने
नरोत्तम दास कोय नित्य लीला सुखमय सदाई स्वरूप मोर मने
नरोत्तम दास कोय नित्य लीला सुखमय सदाई स्फुरुक मोर मने
नरोत्तम दास कोय नित्य लीला सुखमय सदाई स्वरूप मोर मने
वृंदावन रम्य स्थान दिव्य चिंतामणि धाम रतन मंदिर मनोहर
वृंदावन रम्य स्थान दिव्य चिंतामणि धाम रतन मंदिर मनोहर
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Shri Vasanti Ras Leela ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Shyama Sundar Lalita Vishakha ki Jai. Shri Govardhan Giri Govardhan ki Jai. Shri Chandra Sarovar ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. So in this way, the pastimes of spring begin on this day in holy Vrindavan land. And Krishna and the gopis and all the Brajabasis enjoy transcendental bliss on this day, especially the mood of spring, and it continues all through spring. So today is also the appearance day of many great personalities. So it is befitting that I speak a few words on each of them. Time does not permit me to speak at length on each one, so I will have to be very brief. Firstly, it is the appearance day of Srimati Vishnu Priya Devi. As we all know, she is the consort of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Grihastha Leela. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first married Lakshmi Priya when he was known as Nimai Pandit, but she departed from this world and he married another time, and this time it was Vishnu Priya. So Vishnu Priya was very young, only 16 when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas. He left home, and Vishnu Priya Devi was in intense separation and distress of separation. And she performed in immense austerities for the rest of her life. After Mahaprabhu's departure from home, for the rest of her life, she was simply chanting all day long and singing the glories of Krishna and her beloved Nimai Pandit or Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. It is said that she would put aside 1 grain of rice for every mantra, Hare Krishna Mahamantra that she would chant. And then when her chanting was done, then she took whatever grain she had set aside and she would cook. And once it was cooked, she would offer it to her mother-in-law, Sachimata, who was also in great distress of separation from her son. And then after Sachimata ate, Vishnu Priya Devi would eat whatever was remaining. So in this way, Srimati Vishnu Priya for the rest of her life performed these kind of devotional austerities in intense remembrance of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Srimati Vishnu Priya, of course, is being the consort of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself, not an ordinary jiva. So we have to keep that in mind. So Srimati Vishnu Priya's appearance day is on this day. It is also the appearance day of Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami is very well known to all of us. He is one amongst the 6 Goswamis, and he was born in a very wealthy family of landlords, and he left all the opulences at his disposal, and he went to take shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. when he initially arrived in his first attempt, Nityananda Prabhu showered his mercy upon him, and he instructed him to celebrate a very, very well-known festival called the Chida Dahi Utsav at the place of Raghav Pandit in Panihati, not too far from Calcutta, in between Calcutta and Mayapur. And so he sponsored that. He sponsored the whole feast for all the Vaishnavas over there. And having received the mercy of Lord Nityananda, then eventually he was able to get the shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu was overjoyed to have him in his proximity, and he offered him to the care of Swarup Damodar. There were many Raghunaths amongst the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There was Raghunath Das Goswami, there was another Raghunath Das, and this Raghunath Das Goswami, one of the 6 Goswamis, is a third Raghunath. In order to distinguish him from the others, the Gaudiya Vaishnavas would call him, and Mahaprabhu himself would call him Swarupera Raghunath, meaning that he was the Raghunath who was under the care of Swarup Damodar. So Swarup Damodar was like his Shiksha Guru. Whenever Raghunath Das Goswami had any questions, etc., even if they were to ask Mahaprabhu, he would ask them through Swarup Damodar Goswami. Eventually, he lived there for quite a long time in Puri, Jagannath Puri. He got a lot of mercy from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu personally gifted him a Giriraj Shila that he used to worship, along with a Gunja bead necklace. The Gunja bead is very dear to Srimati Radharani, and it represents Srimati Radharani. So he preserved these two and worshipped them every day. And after the disappearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his chief associates in Puri, Raghunath Das Goswami could not bear the separation. So he left Puri with the idea of going to Govardhan and jumping from the top of Govardhan to commit suicide. Somehow or the other, because he was in Braja, he met Rup and Sanatan Goswamis, who actually consoled him and told him, you stay with us like our younger brother. So they persuaded him to give up the idea of suicide, and then Raghunath Das Goswami stayed in Braj for many, many years. And soon after that, he started residing at Radha Kund. And for several decades, he remained there performing intense devotional austerities. And he wrote many books, like Mana Shiksha and so on. So he is especially known for the kind of renunciation and austere life that he led in Puri as well as in Vrajabhumi. So today is his appearance day, anniversary. It is also the appearance day of another great devotee called Pundarik Vidyanidhi. Pundarik Vidyanidhi was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, and he was the guru, the Diksha guru of Gadadhar Pandit. He also happened to be an intimate friend of Swarup Damodar. So actually Pundarik Vidyanidhi was older in age than Mahaprabhu, much older. And Mahaprabhu used to sometimes mysteriously call out, Father, Father, when he was referring to Pundarik Vidyanidhi. And sometimes the devotees could not understand who he meant. Who was he actually calling out for? But actually he was calling out for Pundarik Vidyanidhi. Actually it is explained in the Gauda Ganodesha Deepika that Pundarik Vidyanidhi in Krishna Leela is Vrishabhanu Maharaj, the father of Srimati Radharani. And since Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although he is Krishna, but has come in the mood and complexion of Srimati Radharani, so he addressed Pundarik Vidyanidhi as father. So Pundarik Vidyanidhi used to live in what is present-day Bangladesh, and he would come regularly to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Navadvip. And since he was very close to Swarup Damodar, they would have many intimate exchanges. Like for example, when they met one time, they had a transcendental competition of who would be able to touch the other devotee's lotus feet without having their own lotus feet touched by the other devotee. So they had a kind of a small competition, and both were equally strong. So neither of them won, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the others, had a good laugh, and they enjoyed this particular pastime. The most famous pastime that we all remember about Pundarik Vidyanidhi is when he blessed Gadadhar Pandit. When Mukunda, who was also from the same area, Chattagram, which is today Chittagong in Bangladesh, he said to Gadadhar Pandit, "Today let me take you to see one very, very exalted Vaishnav." Now it so happened that Pundarik Vidyanidhi was a very rich person, very wealthy. So he was wearing silken clothes, very expensive, with all sorts of ornaments, and his hair was, had perfumed oil, and he was chewing betel nut. He was sitting on a very luxurious kind of a bed with silken clothing. So when Gadadhar Pandit saw him, he was taken aback. He was expecting somebody who would be very renounced and living very simply. But here he was seeing someone who apparently, to external vision, was a sense gratifier. So in his mind, he developed a doubt. Why has Mukunda brought me here to see this gentleman? He seems such a worldly person. And understanding Gadadhar's doubtful mind, Mukunda began to chant a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Aho Bakiyan Stanakala Kutam, that famous verse in which Uddhava glorifies Krishna's merciful nature, of how he even delivered Putana even though she had come to kill him. So when Pundarik Vidyanidhi heard this verse, he broke out into an ecstatic trance, and it was so vigorous that he tore apart his clothes and his linen of the bed on which he was seated, and he fell to the ground unconscious, and he exhibited all the Ashta Sattvika Vikar, or the eightfold symptoms of ecstasy. And Gadadhar Pandit was struck with wonder. It was quite a long time before Pundarik Vidyanidhi came to external consciousness. So Pundarik Vidyanidhi had disguised himself as a worldly sense enjoyer, but actually he was a very, very great devotee of Krishna on a very, very exalted platform. So Pundarik Vidyanidhi would come very often to Mayapur, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Vaishnavas regarded him very, very highly. So today also is a day of his appearance. Another great personality who appeared on this day is Raghunandan Takur. Raghunandan Takur was the son of another great devotee called Mukunda. Mukunda was a doctor, and so he had to often go. He even actually he's different from the other Mukunda, by the way. There were several Mukundas as well. So this Mukunda, being a doctor to the Nawab, to the king, he often had to go out on medical services. So the most famous pastime related to Raghunandan and his father Mukunda is that one time he was about to offer bhoga to his deity of Gopinath when there was an emergency medical call and he had to rush for his professional services. And he told his son Raghunandan, who was only a very small boy at that time, he said, "Raghunandan, make Gopinath eat." What he meant to say was that you offer the bhoga plate, which is here, you just offer to Gopinath, keep it on his altar, and wait for some time, and then take it, and then that will become Mahaprasad. That is what he meant to say. But in very simple language, he just said, make Gopinath eat. Now, the little Raghunandan took that in a literal sense from an external point of view. Although Krishna does literally eat that offering, but he eats it in a way that we cannot see and understand clearly. He eats with his eyes and leaves behind the whole plate. But little Raghunandan, not being aware of these intricacies of philosophy, he thought that he would have to make Gopinath, deity, eat in the same way that we human beings eat. So he kept the plate in front of Gopinath and said, Gopinath, eat. So after a few moments or a minute or two or whatever time, he still saw the plate was full. So he thought that that Gopinath had not eaten. So this time he spoke, Gopinath, eat, in a slightly commanding voice. And the plate was still there. Finally, he became desperate and he said, Gopinath, please eat. And Gopinath was conquered by the love, the innocent love of this little boy. And he actually reached out and he took the prasadam and he finished it. The plate was empty. So when Mukunda came back home and he asked his son Raghunandan, so Raghunandan, have you made Gopinath eat? He said, yes. So okay, so where is the Mahaprasadam? So Raghunandan replied, what Mahaprasadam? He has already eaten everything. He said, no, you fed him, but he keeps his Mahaprasadam. So when Raghunandan explained that, Mukunda became suspicious, but he was in two minds. He said, maybe this boy has eaten up all the Mahaprasadam and now he's saying that actually Gopinath ate it. But on the other hand, a doubt came into his mind that who knows, perhaps Gopinath actually performed this pastime. So he wanted to test Gopinath and this boy. So he put another laddu, a plate of laddus, a sweet, on a plate and told Raghunandan, please make Gopinath eat again. So again, Raghunandan went and placed this in front of Gopinath. And then Mukunda hid behind a curtain to see what Gopinath would do. And actually Gopinath, not seeing anybody there, reached out his hand and he picked up the laddu and he placed it in his mouth and he bit half of it. And at that time Mukunda emerged. And very quickly the deity of Gopinath put down the remaining half laddu on the plate. And at that time Mukunda understood the glories of his great devotee son. And being overjoyed, in great transcendental ecstasy, he embraced him. The word soon spread. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called Mukunda one time. And he said, Mukunda, so tell me, I am a little confused. Are you the father and Raghunandan your son? Or is Raghunandan the father and you are the son? What is the truth? So Mukunda said, actually, because I have learnt about Krishna from this child, from this boy, and we learn about Krishna from our father, so I will say that Raghunandan is the father and I am the child. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very, very pleased to hear this. I want to just tell a little experience that I had, a little incident that happened rather many years ago, and I have narrated this many times, but since we are on this pastime, I might narrate it again as well. So one time in our temple, I had given the Srimad Bhagavatam class and I had narrated this pastime. This happened many years ago. And so then I went for breakfast prasadam after the class. And after prasadam, I again came into the temple for something. And there was one gentleman who had come there. I had never seen him before. He was a first-time visitor. So I greeted him and asked him who he was, etc. He said, my name is Mukunda. So I said, really? I was talking about one devotee called Mukunda, and I explained this pastime in the morning, and that Mukunda's name was Raghunandan. So the gentleman replied, my son's name is also Raghunandan. So I was really surprised and taken aback and said, look, this is such a wonderful coincidence. And you have come there on the day that I have described this pastime. And your name is Mukunda, your son's name is Raghunandan, just like in this transcendental father-son pair. So anyway, that was an interesting thing that happened. So therefore today is the appearance day of Vishnu Priya, Raghunath Das Goswami, Pundarik Vidyanidhi, as well as Raghunandan Takur. It also happens to be the disappearance day anniversary of another great Acharya in our Sampradaya, who is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who is well known amongst Gaudiya Vaishnavas for his very learned, very devotional and exquisite commentaries on the Srimad Bhagavatam and also on the Srimad Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures as well. After Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's departure, it was the 6 Goswamis who kept alive the flame of Gaudiya Vaishnavism in Braj and in Bengal. And following them, of course, there were, after the 6 Goswamis, there were Shyamananda Pandit, Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivas Acharya. They continued that glorious tradition. And after that, there was a bit of a dark period. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur came along to revive the Gaudiya Vaishnavism all over in Braja and in Bengal, Orissa and other places. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has played a very important role. He has written very learned scriptures, and we'll find that in Srila Prabhupada's purports, he often cites or quotes from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentaries. So a very, very exalted devotee. He lived in Braj. He performed his pastimes in Radhakund as well. His bhajan kutir is there in Radhakund for those of you who have been there. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's disappearance day is also today on the holy Vasant Panchami. So therefore we should remember all these great acharyas. He has written many other books also, like the Raga Vartama Chandrika and Prema Samputa Vrajariti Chintamani, and one very interesting book which is very small, which is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu. Bindu means a drop. So it is just like a very tiny, a small book, but just he has tried to relish the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He has also written an Ujjvala Neelamani Kiran. Kiran is a ray. So it's like a small commentary on the book of Rupa Goswami called Ujjvala Neelamani. So like this, he has got the Bindu and also the Kiran. So we should all pray to these acharyas and these great personalities on this day. And at the same time, remember the wonderful pastimes that Krishna performs on the holy Vasant Panchami day in Brajabhumi. So Vasant Panchami Mahotsava ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki Jai, Shri Radha Shyamasundar Lalita Vishakha ki Jai, Shri Vasanti Ras Leela ki Jai, Srimati Vishnu Priya Devi ki Jai, Shri Pundarik Vidyanidhi ki Jai, Shri Raghunandan Takur ki Jai, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur ki Jai. Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. So, are there any questions? The devotees in Singapore who are on Zoom call or on Facebook, if there's anybody who has any questions. So otherwise, we'll stop here. So let us relish today's day by thinking about these events and these pastimes, and our day will become very blissful because of that. Thank you very much. And of course, we have to offer our gratitude to Srila Prabhupada, because of whom we are introduced to this most brilliant, extraordinary, transcendental universe of Krishna and his pastimes. So thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.